June 30th, 2013. Well, I spent some hours a couple of days ago reinstalling my jerry-rigged makeshift easel here with the flattened paper. Got it on there. The goal of doing this drawing of great-grandma Zlata Barshewsky for the 6th mosaic of the goal of 10 mosaic drawing combos. And I'm thinking of letting it sit for a while. I spent a great deal of 2010, 11, and 12 working on Under the Wings of God numbers 60 and 61. Orthodox Jew under barbed wire, Olkusz, Poland, 1940, and then multiple amputee awaiting deportation, Łódź, Lodz, Poland. So, not to give up great-grandma Zlata, I was about to say great-grandma Seidel, like I had a fiddler on the roof. But so I'm now working on making a triptych out of Elie's Sin, which was 1984-85, with the railroad spikes added in 87. And then I did the sequel, the long-awaited sequel companion piece in 2012, Bonhoeffer der Jude. So if this proceeds accordingly, it's about the same size. Ran out of this color paper though. But this will be Zlata, and it will have writing, as has the other two. What the writing will be remains to be seen. But it's going to be somewhere along the lines of the Wehrmacht and SS were so threatened by great-grandma Zlata, who was an observant Jew and kosher. They had to murder her. They have these photographs of the slogans painted on the side of trains carrying the transport troops into Poland, saying we are going to Poland to kill the Jews, this sort of thing. She was a great threat. Okay, to be continued. The pencil underlay before I start the inking here of her portrait. So I've decided to make a sequel to the 2012 drawing called Bonhoeffer der Jude. Getting a lot of light reflection from my windows here. It's Rudiger Schleicher at the bottom, who was executed by the Nazis, as was Pastor Bonhoeffer. Here we have a Mickey Mouse with a mustache. And Alex Schwartz, a late Holocaust survivor, refugee from Vienna, a friend of mine. A Nazi Wehrmacht soldier in the upper right. So the Bonhoeffer der Jude piece was a long-awaited, many years sequel to my 1984-85 work called Elie's Sin, which we see here, portraying Elie Wiesel and addressing both symbols, symbology, and linguistic, both spoken and written forms of language pertaining to anti-Semitism and the hatred of Jews. That's a saluting concentration camp guard tower at upper right. So, so I decided that those two works needed a companion, a triptych. Hey, why settle for a diptych when we can have a triptych? 3 may be a crowd in some places, but not in mine. So I'm working on a drawing of my murdered great-grandmother, Zlata Barshewsky, who I figure was born, give or take, around 1860. Hadn't been for the Nazis, she actually could have very well been alive in my early childhood. So I was born in 1950. And she lived in the Jewish Home for the Aged in Bialystok, a large city in northeast Poland, whose population was half Jewish prior to the Nazi invasion in 1939. This is one of about 4 or 5 photos I have of her, 2 of which she's seated on a hammock, which I assume is strung outside, well, it's between 2 trees, out on the grounds of the Jewish Home for the Aged there. This is the photograph I'm drawing from. And the linguistic part, the writing, has yet to be decided. Right now I'm just working on the drawing, which is in ink and gouache. I'm going to be doing blue for her, the dress there, upper portion, her upper torso. We've got some drawing sections and linoleum block and woodcut print sections here on the bottom. So again, there will be writing and a whole lot of other imagery in there, following along the same kind of visual thematic concerns of these 2 other works. So to be continued. It is July 2nd, 2013. So she had 5 children, 2 of whom did not survive infancy, 3 of whom did. The 3 who did were boys. One of them was named Liebl, and he had moved to Berlin and was married to a Jewish woman from Lithuania. They sold clothing out of their apartment, or he did. I assume they were not very prosperous. And they had 2 children, one born in 1923, one born in late 1920s. The children would have been first cousins of my mom. And Liebl and his wife and their kids all vanished into the abyss during the years of the Third Reich. I assume they were either murdered in concentration camps or gassed in one of the death camps. Another son was in the served in the Red Army and survived the war and moved to Israel around 1956 or so, and he was a commercial photographer, had a photo photography studio shop in Tel Aviv, and died in the early 1980s. And the other son was my grandfather, who was born Heschl Barshewsky, moved to London around 1903 and became Harry. The story, as I recall, is that he worked for someone named Graff and adopted that name, and a couple of years later, when he moved to New York, was then Harry Graff from Heschl Barshewsky. And Harry and my grandmother, his wife Sarah, who was Sergei back in the old country. She was from Bobroysk in western Russia, or Belarusia. They lived in Englewood, New Jersey, right across from Upper Manhattan when I was growing up. But getting back to Harry and his mother, he never saw his mother again after he left Poland, which astonishes me. I wish I could go back in time and talk to him. He spoke English, Yiddish, Polish, and Russian. He was an amateur composer, and had a dry cleaning business when my mother and her siblings were growing up. My mother's the only one left now of that immediate family. And Grandpa Harry corresponded with his mother for all those decades, through the teens, 20s, until sometime in 1939, when the correspondence ceased after the Nazi occupation of Poland And I've wondered in recent years, especially since I've gotten these different photos of his mother, Zlata, what it was like for him, especially after the war ended and there were all the news reports about the atrocities and mass murder of Jews, to not only have never seen his mother again, but knowing that she would have died in some horrible and brutal way. I figure either she would have starved to death in the ghetto, or she would have been shot. There were, I forget, 5,000 or 6,000 Bialystok Jews were murdered in a forest outside of the city. But most of Bialystok's Jews were gassed to death in Treblinka, and the gassing deaths were just horrible. And I just wonder what that was like. She was very religious, and I have great respect for her for that. And the story is my mother's now late first cousin, another cousin in Tel Aviv, told me a few years ago she wouldn't eat in the homes of her of the two sons who lived in Europe, who stayed in, one was in Berlin and the other in Lithuania, Poland. So anyway, this will be kind of my homage to her. She's actually been previously depicted very small, though, size-wise in terms of the drawing image, perhaps about so big. In Shoah Dreams, the largest drawing of the Under the Wings of God series, dating from around I forget what year I began it, 97 or 98, completed in 2001, which is 4 by 8 feet. It depicts 28 or 29 people, plus a Polish Torah crown, the interior of the Tlomaki Great Synagogue of Warsaw, which is blown up. There's an Italian Jewish wedding ring, mainly Polish Jewish victims of the Nazis. There's one Czech Jewish boy, and Bruno Schultz is depicted, the murdered visual artist and playwright, and Felix Nussbaum, the great German Jewish painter, who was murdered at Auschwitz, as was his wife Felka, who was from Warsaw. So great-grandma Zlata is portrayed in Shoah Dreams, but I'm giving her a kind of a larger memorial artistic aesthetic window here. There you have it. To be continued. July 5th, 2013, progress report on the third work of the tryptich trilogy with that starts with Elie's Sin. That's the one with the colorful swastika in the lower left there. Getting a lot of light and lamp reflection, unfortunately. That was from 1984-85. The companion piece to that, sequel from 2012, called Bonhoeffer der Jude, with special guest appearances by Rudiger Schleicher and Alexander Schwartz. And now the third work, which depicts Zlata Barshewsky, my murdered great-grandmother, who she's seen sitting on a hammock at the grounds of the Jewish Home for the Aged in Bialystok. Zlata of Bialystok. So some sections are moving along here nicely. Augen auf, his eyes open. Inspired by a safety flyer I'd seen at the Jewish Old Folks Home in Vienna, 1999. Here's Zlata. Everything's either drawn or linoleum block print or woodcut, with the exception of the crown here, which is from a piece of fabric from a stuffed bird, like a parrot, and it had fallen off. Zlata. This section here is in progress. Jew in the room. This will all be color when it's completed. Holy mackerel. Although it says sardines in Hebrew, but it's close. And more to come, particularly in this area here, so to be continued. 30-second preview of the drawing in progress. Queen Zlata of Bialystok. I've made her an honorary queen. She was my great-grandmother. She lived in the Jewish home for the aged in Bialystok. Here she is seated on a hammock. Probably 1937. So again, this is in progress. It's all India ink, colored pencil, linoleum block prints, and a woodcut with one piece of collaged fabric here, which was donated by the green bird there. And it came off its foot. It was sitting around waiting to be stitched on. And the piece is will complete the trilogy of Elie's Sin on the right there. From 1984-85, the railroad spikes added in 87, and its long-awaited sequel, Bonhoeffer der Jude, from 2012. So, to be continued. July 10th, 2013, just a quick progress report on the Holocaust drawing in progress depicting my murdered great-grandmother Zlata Barshewsky of Bialystok, Poland. So these here on the right are photos I printed today from a film. I took some photos of pre-World War II Jewish Bialystok. And I read in Jewish Roots in Poland that the Jewish population of Bialystok was actually 60%, not 50% as I thought prior to World War II. So we've got woodcut prints and lino prints, linoleum block prints down in the bottom here. I just finished the this one-man submarine based on I have to find out who this character is. We've got more drawing sections there and there, and this has yet to be inked, of a man wearing a talit, a prayer shawl with a kippah, yarmulke in Yiddish, and then we've got a Jew in the room, holy mackerel. There's the sardine box using for the section down there. So, to be continued. So yeah, I will likely be depicting one of these photographs, one of these building structures in the upper right here, along with something else. Again, this is a companion piece for completing the trilogy for Elie's Sin on the right there, and to the left, Bonhoeffer der Jude. To be continued. July 11th, 2013, progress report on the drawing of my murdered great-grandmother, Zlata Barshewsky. Just a quick overview. Got a lot of sections to draw yet. That's Zlata. We have colored pencil, India ink, gouache, linoleum block prints, woodcut prints, and one piece of fabric from a stuffed animal, toy stuffed animal, bird's foot. July 18th, 2013, progress report on the Shoah Holocaust drawing in progress. Zlata the Righteous of Bialystok. It's actually a mixed media work. Ink, gouache, colored pencil, woodcut, linocut, that's linoleum block print, and one piece of fabric, which is right there from a stuffed animal, parrot, child's toy. The foot came off. It made its way onto the artwork. How can Alpha's eyes open? So there will be more done in some of these sections here and there. Here also. As well as in this section here. This is in progress of a synagogue that was in Bialystok, which is where Zlata lived. And then this whole section here. So, to be continued. There's a photograph of Zlata, murdered by the Nazis. July 24th, 2013. So I toned down what had been red around the eyes here. Also the letters A, G, N, A, F, and the two exclamations. Augen auf, eyes open. I also enhanced the blue in my great-grandmother Zlata Barshewsky's blouse, and finally decided on what I would be drawing in this kind of pivotal, if only because of the size, large section on the right. And I've done a pencil outline there, kind of underdrawing, and I'm going to be drawing her son Liebl Barshewsky, who had moved to Berlin as a young man, was married to Hilda, Jewish woman from Lithuania. They had two children whose names I don't know, one born in 1923, one born in 1929. I can infer that they were not well off. He sold clothing out of their apartment. They all vanished into the abyss during the years of the Thousand-Year Reich, 1933 to 45. I assume murdered in either concentration camps or in one or more of the death camps like Belzec, Majdanek, Sobibor, Treblinka, Auschwitz-Birkenau. So that's what I'm doing there. Some small sections will be artified here and there with imagery, pictures as they say in New York, and some writing in German and in Hebrew. I was thinking of doing Willkommen, welcome, on top of the can of holy mackerel, sardines. So to be continued. I think Liebl will work well there. I'll be doing very fine dot pointillist drawing because the photo I have is it's very tonal, as opposed to many of the other photographs I've worked with have been kind of very grainy with dots, but this is not the case with this photo. The photo was probably taken between 1905 and 1910. It was from a group photo I have of him, which also includes one of his brothers, not my grandfather, but the one who served in the Red Army and had moved to Tel Aviv after World War II, or in the 1950s, had a commercial photography studio, and died in the early 1980s. And it was from a 8x10 negative that I got from his daughter, who passed away in the last year. She was a first cousin of my mother's, that I was able to do this enlargement of Liebl. So to be continued. So I'm going to be retitling the artwork, which had been Zlata, the Righteous of Bialystok, and I will be adding and her son Liebl Barshewsky, who had moved to Berlin and was murdered with his family during the time of the Nazi regime. There you have it. July 25th, 2013, making good progress on the drawing of my great-grandmother, whom I'm calling Zlata the Righteous of Bialystok. So that's her portrait here. Give an overview of the whole work, which is still in progress here. Augen auf is German, eyes open. I took it from a security flyer I had gotten a copy of at a Jewish old folks home in Central Europe that I visited in 1999. Where a Holocaust survivor friend had gone to live after his wife passed on here in Seattle. So the section I'm working on right now, which is here, pointillist drawing technique, using a very fine metal kind of pen point in a plastic holder, dipping it into a liquid bottle of liquid India ink. Is here. This is my great uncle Liebl, who had moved from northeast Poland near Bialystok to Berlin, I'm assuming in the early 20th century. He was married to a Jewish woman named Heschl from Lithuania. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. One was born in 1923, the other 1929. This is Liebl here, the photograph I'm working from. All 4 vanished into the abyss during the years of the Third Reich, assuming they were murdered either in concentration camps or death camps. So this is the, in 1999, on my first teaching trip to Israel, I met my mother's first cousin, Genya, who's no longer with us. This is Genya here, around 1937. Her brother, visiting my great-grandmother at the Jewish Home for the Aged in Bialystok. Here's Zlata again, different photo. This is my mom's 2 cousins' father, Shevak, who served in the Red Army, as did he. They both survived, moved to Israel in the 1950s. Shevak had a commercial art studio and photo studio in Tel Aviv. I've never met him. So when I met Genya, who was elderly at the first time I met her, 1999, no longer a teenager, as is here, she gave me a 8x10 black and white negative. I asked her what it is. She didn't know. I had it a print made. This is a photocopy of the print. And the next time I was in Israel in 2002, I handed her the print. I said, "This is from the negative you gave me. Do you recognize anybody?" She said, "Yes, of course. That's my father, Shevak. And that's your great uncle, Liebl, another of Harry's brothers." Harry was my mother's grandfather. My mother's father, I'm sorry. My grandfather. So the most fascinating thing about the photograph to me, which someone had gone to, or someone's a great amount of time to get everyone seated and or standing, and one can tell an enormous amount by studying photographs since the advent of photography in the mid-19th century. So I'm also guessing this was taken around 1905 or thereabouts. But one thing we can tell is that no one was religious in this group of Polish Jews. How do we know that? Several things. First, the men and women are all seated together. The men are all clean shaven. Not one has a beard. But the most humorous part of the photograph to me is all this trouble getting everybody arranged. The men are in various types of ties, both extremely modern as well as kind of old-fashioned. Makes me think of like Woodrow Wilson and so on, the bow ties. Is that there's this July 26th progress report here. There have been some changes in different sections, and more things to come here. I will be adding a small portrait of Field Marshal Pilsudski, probably here, and maybe with his favorite horse, Chestnut, which I forgot what the Polish name is. Chestnut in English. Anyway, here's what we have so far. Woodcut drawing sections, linoleum block print, India ink, and so on. Portrait of my great uncle, Liebl of Berlin A.K, is in progress here on the right. Augen auf is pretty much done, and the eyes. There's one piece of collage, which is the fabric here. There's Zlata Barshewsky, my murdered great-grandmother. And there you have it, to be continued. Jew in the room. Holy mackerel. Shabbat Shalom. July 27th, I believe, Saturday, Shabbat Shalom. And it's a beautiful sunny day outside. Some with a book I bought some years ago, Jerusalem, 1999 at Yad Vashem. And I still see their faces, images of Polish Jews. I'm not going to try the Polish. Fundacja Shalom, Fotografia Żydów Polskich. Well, I'll leave it at that. This photo, this wonderful book, caught my eye. And I particularly like how the Hebrew script was written in ink over the photo. These two words here are referenced. Members of the charity society, Malbish Aronim, and that I was able to read. Normally I only read without vowels, but I read this. Malbish Aronim, the clothing of the naked society in Chelm. Then in quotes, the society collected donations to buy material from which were sewn clothing and footwear for those in need. Craftsmen, members of the Brotherhood, worked free of charge. On Passover in the spring and Sukkot in the autumn, 200 to 300 sets of clothing were distributed. The photo was contributed by Abram Bekir of Tel Aviv. And so the Malbish Aronim I copied into the hair of my great uncle Liebl Barshewsky there, whose face I've redone since I worked on it yesterday evening, last night. I had decided I had to tone down the color that I'd gotten in there. So this is a report for today on progress of the whole mixed media drawing. It's India ink, gouache, colored pencil, linocut, woodcut, and one piece of fabric, which is that there, from a stuffed animal toy of a parrot. So more to do yet, including drawing. I'm planning on doing a small depiction of General Field Marshal Pilsudski of Poland, who is considered a friend to Jews and other minorities in Poland in the interwar years between the world wars, even though he was a dictator. But he had some fairly progressive ideas on multiculturalism, multi-faith interaction, and multi-ethnic dialogue and all that, as compared to what I read. I mean, there were many Polish kind of Catholics of the fascist reactionary end who wanted to expel all non-Catholics from Polish soil, from Polish territory. And that was completely different than Pilsudski's interests. So, to be continued. August 1st, 2013, just completed the mixed media drawing Zlata the Righteous of Bialystok and her son Liebl, who had lived in Berlin with his wife Heschl and their 2 children born in the 1920s. This mixed media drawing includes India ink, gouache, a type of watercolor, woodcut, linocut, those are prints, a colored pencil, and 1 piece of collaged on fabric that we have there from a stuffed animal toy of a parrot from its foot that had fallen off. Just a very quick overview. The Hebrew says, the clothing of the naked society. I took it from inspired by ink writing on a pre-World War II photo from the Polish town city of Chelm, where I had a bunch of men posed in clothes who were in the society which made clothing for the poor and indigent. Drawn from a photograph I took of a congregant at a high holiday service, either Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, at Seattle's Renewal Synagogue, Congregation 8 Sor, several years ago. I guess a well-known submariner there, from a toy I bought at Seattle Goodwill. The arm with the anvil, hammer, from a photograph I have of a beautiful sculptural gravestone in the Jewish cemetery in Warsaw for someone whose nickname was Yanka, born 1888 and died in 1920. That's Zlata there, my great-grandmother. Some of the other imagery here, inspired by black and white photographs from the Wooden Synagogues book, published in Poland in 1959 by Arkady Press. Drawings here from West Palm Beach, Florida, I did in the early 1990s of birds. This one here too, kind of a mass preening. This was drawn at Seattle's Green Lake Park. Also more these egrets drawn in West Palm Beach, again early 1990s. The chicken here I believe I drew out in the Olympic Peninsula around 2005. There you have it. Zlata the Righteous of Bialystok and her son Liebl, who lived in Berlin, both murdered. Devorah Quest here with Elmo.
Met Elmo, this version of rendition of Elmo, and Elmo has a rendition on Akiva's artwork. So
this
there's
is called Zlata Barshewsky of Bialystok and her son Liebl, who lived in Berlin. And she asked me, why is Elmo the submariner here in the drawing? And
he wants to know too, who's this?
So I turned the question back to Devorah. She has a young she has young grandkids too, and does all kinds of programming with all ages.
I want to know too. So why?
Why do you think I put Elmo in a drawing about the Holocaust?
Well, okay. All right, maybe for this moment. So that I, Elmo, in the actual secondary, thirdary familiarity, get to see myself and me And for the children? Is it for the children who look at your art? Is it for the whimsy? Is it for, you have to have something playful when you have such heavy stuff? You can't just have the heavy all the time. You gotta combine, because that creates balance, right? So there's a balance element to it. Elmo balances out Zlata and
Liebl.
Liebl. Who's Liebl?
He was one of her sons, one of my grandfather's brothers.
Oh, and what happened to him?
He and his wife and their 2 children, who
Yeah.
were cousins of my mom, they all vanished into the abyss. They lived in Berlin.
Oh.
Zlata lived in the Jewish old folks' home in Bialystok.
Oh, okay. Jew in the room.
Thank you. Got 3 more seconds. Anything? Closing
Holy
salutations here?
mackerel.
Greetings. It's December 6, 2015. Just wanted to show how this looks with the accoutrements added to the top, bottom, and left and right side of the frame. The wood pieces at the bottom, right, and top were, that collection has it from a table, old rickety table I had that I disassembled. And this here, one of several pieces I took off an old sewing machine cabinet that had that was going to a recycling center in a town in northeast Scotland this past March, and I saved these pieces, a couple of which have now been added to another major Shoah artwork. So there you have it. This mixed media drawing, woodcut print, and in memory of my mother's paternal grandmother, Zlata Barshewsky, and her son Liebl, who lived in Berlin with his wife Heschl. Their 2 children. The 2 children were first cousins of my mom. And all the rest, of course, I've already described in the previous segments of creating the drawing from start to finish. The crocheted beret I'm wearing, by the way, is about 40 odd years old. It was made by Sarah Graff, my mother's mother, who died in 1981. Sarah's husband was my Grandpa Harry. Grandpa Harry was one of the children of Zlata and one of Liebl's brothers. So there you have it. Thank you everyone who has watched this through in its entirety on the history of making this artwork from start to finish.